Hello and welcome everyone. This is Taco Movie Talks. I'm joined here by Ethan, aka Film Junkie. Ethan, how's your week been? Have you been watching anything good or working on any videos of your own?
It's been going good. Currently still working on the David Lynch ranking. Just got a new piece of equipment to help me with that, hopefully. I also just came back from seeing Women Talking for the Oscar nominations as they did come out a couple days ago.
When you watched it, were you at like any initial kind of just surface level reactions? And I guess, did you feel like it was a good nomination?
Well, from the heels of last year, I thought it was pretty decent lineup of nominations. Last year they nominated movies that I would call bad, and and I don't think I agreed with a single winner from last year. But I feel like a lot of other good movies this year have a chance, and Women Talking definitely deserves to be on the nominations list. It was a very great movie that used emotions very well to drive the narrative.
So you mentioned Oscar nominations. I have kind of two, I guess, big points that I was, I guess, surprised by just on the nomination level. What did anything kind of strike you for the 2022 nominations? Any, I guess, snubs and or things that got nominated that you did not think should have?
Well, the big one is Decision to Leave for international feature, which is a bad snub, a real
Mm-hmm.
rough snub. Um, I think this is Park Chan-wook's third time a masterpiece of his, in my opinion, has been snubbed for anything in the Oscars, which is criminal. Because yeah, I thought Decision to Leave was a masterpiece,
Yeah,
and it got
we
nothing.
we reviewed that, and I think both of our takes were that it was a great movie, and I know you were very much in love with that movie. That was one of the points I wanted to bring up, and it was one of those things where I honestly it made me wonder if South Korea nominated it for their entry as best international feature, which they did. So
Hmm.
I don't know why it didn't get nominated. Um, I feel like, and I think they have made this mistake before, and I
Yeah.
mean you call it a mistake or what have you. Not only not nominating Park Chan Wook, but they will have just one of the best international features nominated for best picture, and it kind of seems like okay, so All Quiet on the Western Front is clearly the favorite to win that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what I was also thinking about. That's a good point to bring up. Drive My Car, they did the same thing,
Exactly.
which which not to denounce that movie because that movie is fantastic, but maybe nominate another international feature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, not that I guess the suspense isn't everything. I guess giving the accolade, but what I honestly, my opinion, and it might be a minority opinion, but you, Ethan, might agree with it. Would be I prefer Decision to Leave to All Quiet on the Western Front, and I haven't seen all of the international nominees. I've heard good things about EO actually,
Mm.
which is really it seems like directly inspired by a Robert Bresson movie.
Balthazar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've heard good things about that, and the other ones I'm kind of blanking on, but it seems as though, and I could be wrong, All Quiet on the Western Front will likely win, and for a movie to not be nominated, that is, I think you could make a sound argument that Decision to Leave is better. It just feels
Hmm.
weird.
Yeah, it's just Decision to Leave is one of the most tightly and most well crafted, well directed movies I've seen in a while. So the fact that it didn't get nominated, in my opinion, is criminal. And I have not seen All Quiet on the Western Front in its entirety just yet. I've seen the first 40 minutes, and from what I can tell, no. No, I think Decision to Leave definitely deserves the nomination.
Mm-hmm. And I do like. I think being nominated, All Quiet on the Western Front, I can totally see that, and I think you as well. Um,
Hmm.
the other kind of big sticking point, and again, we talked about this on one of our previous episodes. You might know, and I think we had even predicted that Anna de Armas was nominated for Best Actress, and
Yeah.
I was surprised. And if she wins, I will be completely shocked.
Yeah. Definitely not my pick for Best Actress. Um, I definitely think it should go to Kate Blanchett or Tar. But I don't hate the fact that she got nominated
Mm-hmm.
because I think she did a lot better than the movie warranted. But she definitely doesn't deserve to win. That's
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah, it's I have the like very very mixed emotions. Personally, I don't feel any ill will towards her. I don't think she's a bad actress at all. I just felt like the movie did so much wrong that it made that an uphill performance, and I thought it showed. And it feels like a mixed bag to nominate a very mixed performance. And again, I want to make completely clear it has nothing to do with her as a person. Not like she's done anything wrong, but
Hmm.
she tried. You can tell she really tried to put everything into that performance, which oftentimes that is what makes the performances great. But man, she had an uphill battle there, and I really I think it was out of her control as to elevating that to become a great performance.
Yeah. But a big surprise for the actor for the best actor category is Paul Mescal. I was very surprised and very happy that he got the nomination for best actor.
Now, what movie did he get nominated for?
For After Sun.
Okay, I've yet to see that. That's very high on my list, and I'm eagerly awaiting a way to get my hands on that one. Uh, I'm very excited to see that. Um, you would be very proud of me, Ethan. Uh,
Did
guess what I just finished watching today.
you finish watching Chinatown?
I did finish that. I finished that last
Oh,
week.
that's right. Oh, that's right. It got weeks mixed up. But what did you watch? Sorry.
I do want to come back to Chinatown though, and but just finished Taxi Driver
Oh, nice.
finally, which
What'd you
like
think?
it's clearly great. Like, and you can tell that there's a lot of movies. So you hear the comparison that I can't remember the director's name, but the director of Joker uh,
Yeah. Todd Phillips.
was heavily inspired by
Hmm.
Scorsese. They say both the Taxi Driver and then the other Robert De Niro movie about a talk show host, which I'm blanking on the name. It's like a combination of those two. Is
Yeah.
the love child would be Joker,
Hmm.
and man, there is yes. I could definitely see, as far as Taxi Driver, heavy inspiration, and like that slow descent kind of into the abyss slash madness is. I think it's never been done better than in Taxi Driver.
Definitely not.
And
Definitely not. I The performances, the moody light, the just the filmmaking as far as like the way they just focus on Travis is just oh gosh, so good.
and Harvey Keitel as
Yeah.
the pimp. It was. I wouldn't say you're seeing sides of every different sides of everyone, but it was a lot different than the majority of the Scorsese movies I was used to. It felt, man, it felt so New York atmosphere, which he always injects, but it was like the grittier side of New York. I don't even know how to explain it. It just
Yeah.
it felt like a completely different side of Scorsese,
Hmm.
different side of Harvey Keitel, and good performance by Jodie Foster. She had to be like legitimately like 16 when she filmed that.
He was 13.
Really? So she was the
Yeah.
same age as the character she was portraying.
Yeah.
Damn, that's impressive.
Yeah. One of the best child performances of all time, easily.
Most definitely. Another one I'll throw in there would be Natalie Portman in Leo the Professional. Are you
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah, Leon the Professional, definitely. So yeah, Natalie Portman. One that I would put at the top, perhaps, would be Tatum O'Neal for Paper Moon.
Mm,
Uh, Oscar-winning performance.
the kid.
She was 10.
She.
She's the youngest person to win an Oscar.
That seems like it's a record that is not gonna get beat for sure.
No, but
Because
she was so good as this very precocious child,
I'm
and in one of my favorite movies ever. I love Paper Moon as well.
I'm going to have to watch that. I didn't know that the kid got an Oscar, and honestly, it's worth noting the good performances because the they usually do okay. There's a few bad, but I think the majority are like not terrific. It's just kind of like you can stand it. So
Mhm.
anytime you see someone really nail it, it stands out.
Yeah,
Another movie I watched, Ethan, that I wanna if you've watched it, I would really love to talk about it. But I think it's pretty hard to get your hands on. It's Skinamarink. Have you heard of this film? Have you seen it?
I've heard of it, and the only theater it's playing at is like 30 miles away from my location.
Really?
Yeah.
The bright side, and I don't know if you have this streaming service, but I do believe, and we're coming towards February, sometime in February, I think at the beginning, it's going on Shutter.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah, I'll probably get like a month subscription and try and watch that. I've been hearing a lot about it.
It's man, it's different. It's a really different movie. A lot of people have been kind of poo pooing it, and some people think it's brilliant. I'm more towards the brilliant side. Um,
Hmm.
and something that astonished me was I found out after watching it was that it's a $15,000 budget shot in 7 days, which is all
Yeah,
believable by what they do. It makes sense. It makes a ton of sense afterwards. But man, did he maximize the director and writer what he was able to get and I think he's already 100x'd what the budget of the film was. From what I've heard, it made 1 million first weekend and then 500,000 the next weekend. So
Dang,
yeah, it
good
seems
for
like
him.
yeah, exactly. And I think you might be able to speak to this. I mean, a $15,000 budget for a feature length film, that is peanuts.
Yeah, especially for today,
Mm-hmm.
that is nothing. I think, well, a big example would be like Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
Mm-hmm.
which was 10,000 for 1974, so it's spread quite a bit further
Mm-hmm.
um, for Toby Hooper, but 15,000 now is not a lot of money.
Yeah. So definitely a movie to check out. And I also watched X, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna watch Pearl tonight. How did you like that movie? I think I remember you saying it was near your top, like near probably within your top five favorite horror movies of 2022.
Yeah, I haven't seen a ton of horror movies this year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I watched both X and Pearl. And I think X is better because I like the jumping off point for these two connected characters to get their start in like their world
Mm-hmm.
that Ty West has created. I haven't seen Ty West's other movies. I know he made a movie like 13 years ago called The House and the Devil that's supposed to be really solid.
Ooh.
But I definitely have to check out more of his work because I think he's a very interesting, unique horror director. I prefer X. I just said that. I'm sorry. Um, yeah. So.
Oh, I'm excited to check out Pearl, and the crazy thing about this was well, I don't know how he did it. Maybe he was shooting both nearly simultaneously or delayed the release of X, but I mean they X and Pearl both released in 2022, and that's insane.
Yeah. Well, that's usually due to like block shooting, like the Lord of the Rings series. There's no way that you can film one, then film another, then film another in the span of 1 year after the other because they're such huge movies.
Mm-hmm.
So they block shot it for about 4 years from like 97 to '01,
Mm-hmm.
and then they just started editing everything.
Oh man, I didn't know that. That's actually really neat.
Yeah.
Ethan, two movies we watched this week uh, by one of the most famous Japanese director,
Hmm.
Kobayashi, of course, we're talking about. Um, I was introduced to Akira Kurosawa first, and
Yeah,
kind
as
of
most people were.
exactly. Western audiences, I think, are much more familiar with Akira Kurosawa. Kind of speaking to your
Hmm.
point, and do you? Because I know there was a time period where Eastern audiences started to, in a way, reject Akira Kurosawa, which led to him needing to be funded by the likes of George Lucas and Coppola. Was Kobayashi someone who his home country kind of stayed faithful to because there's a distinct kind of difference in the way culturally the samurai especially acted when you compare a Kurosawa to a Kobayashi movie, and I was wondering if you kind of knew that, and if you also kind of noticed a slight difference in the way the characters actually acted.
I actually did not know about Kurosawa being rejected by Japanese funding and needed like American funding. I actually did not know that. When did that happen? Do you know?
I know that I think it might have been late 70s, but certainly into the 80s. because it's either Ran or Kagemusha or both. The producers were George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, and because apparently they had grown up on him and realized that he was having trouble getting funding, and
Yeah.
you know, why wouldn't you try to help out someone who you know is amazing and that you looked up to, and thank God for it, because I think you have
Yeah.
seen both of these movies. And
I've only seen Rom though.
you're a fan of that, correct?
I love Rom, one of my favorites.
So I mean, yeah, it's among Kurosawa's best, honestly.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is, it's I didn't, I don't fully understand the reasoning for it, because it's not like a Tarkovsky esque situation where he was I mean, he was a little bit critical in movies like Akira, or Akiru, I believe it's pronounced. But
Ikiru, I think. Yeah.
yeah, it seems like the bureaucracy was a bit criticized, but
Hmm.
that I don't know. Maybe they take that very seriously, but during that time period, I didn't feel like, I don't know. I think it was more. It could have very well been audience based, quite frankly.
Yeah. I to me, I think Kobayashi is very different as far as what he's trying to say in his movies, but I think both him and Akira Kurosawa have similar goals.
Mm-hmm.
Like, um, I look at Harakiri and I look at Samurai Rebellion and I see very um I don't I didn't want to use this word, but I would say more like progressive messages
Mm-hmm.
in the way they look at tradition, in the way that he looks at tradition.
Mm.
Um, and I think that while they say different things, they have similar goals.
I agree. Both the movies that we chose to watch, you could. There's certainly a nature of standing up against authority. And that's kind of
Hmm.
the basis of conflict for both movies, and creates a really great conflict at
Yeah.
the end.
Hmm.
So from that standpoint, I guess the period piece in use of samurai movie is a really great way to veil any criticism that you do have that could be like a modern criticism, if you kind of
Hmm.
format it using the background of a time, years ago.
Yes, definitely.
One of the things that I loved that made this a kind of familiar movie, despite this only being the second and third Kobayashi movie I'd ever seen, was the use of some of the absolute Japanese megastars for the time. We have Mifune, whose first name I'm gonna absolutely butcher if I say it, and the other one whose name I'm blanking on. I think it starts with a K. He is
I,
the main character of Harikari.
Tatsuya Nakadai.
Yes. Okay. I'm glad you pronounced it, because I don't think my pronunciation would have been anywhere near as good as yours.
Yeah.
But man, they take their leading roles, and Ketadai is in Samurai Rebellion as well, and plays
Hmm.
a really good supporting character. But Mifune, the lead in Samurai Rebellion, and then Ketadai, and Harikari, I felt like both really knocked it out of the park with their performances.
Yes, definitely. I think, well, it with Samurai Rebellion, I feel like Mifune doesn't really get the lead, the main attention until uh, like about an hour and a half in.
I completely agree. His son is one of the pretty much the, I guess you could say, the central character. I would argue,
Mm.
and he does a really good job. And in that time period, Buffoon does a pretty good job of not stealing the spotlight. But when it's his time to shine, like you said, after about an hour into it, he really takes charge of the movie. And I guess from that standpoint, the fact that you get a limited dose of Mifune as opposed to can you say his name again? I don't.
Tatsuya Nakadai.
Nakadai. You get a like a full serving of him in Hidekari. And man, does he really, I mean, the story of that movie is really, really great. And the combination of his performance in that story makes the movie just absolutely pop.
Yeah, definitely.
So what were some of your favorite aspects between these two movies that you think Kobayashi really, really nailed?
Themes of revenge is definitely one. I feel Harakiri is so genius in its storytelling that you have no clue where it's going, and you want to know where it's going because you're invested in the characters. And it's same thing for Samurai Rebellion, but like Harakiri has probably one of the best stories in movie history, in my opinion.
I completely agree. The beginning is so that is a great way to start off any tale.
Yeah.
And how it becomes interrelated is because I was starting to kind of pick up on the pieces as soon as Nakadai's character was asking. I think it was the second person who. So just to kind of give a little insight to the movie, Hidekari is the act of taking one's own life as a samurai because it's one of the most honorable ways to do that, especially
Yeah.
when you're like down on your luck,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah, most people in the West probably know it as seppuku, but another word for it is harakiri.
So okay, that is. I'm glad you brought that up because they mentioned it, and I kind of through context realized that it was the same thing essentially. But
Hmm.
I Hidekari for I don't know why. I think it was. Are you familiar with Dan Carlin's Hardcore History at all?
No.
Okay. Well, if you like history, recommend it. But anywho, I think he referred to it as Hidekari. I used to listen to that years ago, but that was the only reason I was familiar with it. I was actually not familiar with seppuku. Is that is the process itself? Is the disembowelment the same for seppuku, or is it you are taking your own life but in a different way with that, or is it just the same thing, different name?
I think it is the same thing, different name. I could be wrong though.
Okay. So, in this process, because disemboweling yourself isn't essentially always, or maybe like ever going to be an instantaneous death. You have a second generally for these processes, and they actually do a very, very good job of explaining this in the movie. So you will
Mhm.
have a samurai behead you after, you know, a certain point in the ritual, for lack of a better term. And
Yeah.
Nakadai asks for so and so, they're sick, and then later asks for a second person request, and they're sick. And it was right around that point where I started to put pieces together. I wasn't 100% sure what had happened, but it was very, very interesting. And I love when a movie can just slowly pull the covers, or the cover back of what the story is. And
Yeah.
spectacularly done.
Yeah. He Kobayashi is so good at just very simple stories because I was wondering because when I first watched it I was like what's so special about Harakiri that you won't get out of most other movies, and it's just a story that you could possibly put together, but you have no clue where it's going, and you'll still be shocked by every single twist and turn that it takes.
Absolutely. And it's like the mark of a storyteller is to be able to do something like that, because quite honestly, you can sum up the movie in probably 2 minutes or less. You could tell the entirety of the story, yet he's able to. And I don't even want to use stretch, because that is not what happens with this movie, but unveil this great revenge story over the course of 2 hours and 15 minutes, where you're on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Yeah, it's never boring. It's just a simple story, and yet it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and yet it never is boring.
Exactly. And the story beats are just perfectly placed. If Because, and I think that is another aspect that it wasn't immediately evident to me, but as I'm thinking about it now, because the story we've said is amazing, but if you were to maybe unveil it too slowly or too quickly, there would have been parts of this movie that wouldn't have gelled so well, and it all feels necessary. So, like, I honestly, I have to say, I think the pacing was right on the mark.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that really kind of stuck out to you in Hetty?
Well, the cinematography
Mm.
is, I think, in terms of visuals, Kobayashi, next to Kurosawa, is one of the best to ever do it.
Mm-hmm.
His visuals for his movies are like paintings almost. You look at films like Kwaidan, which is like
Mm.
a horror anthology, and it's just amazing what he's able to do with the camera.
Yeah, that is one of the prettiest movies, Qui-Gon. As are these. They're very picturesque, and they have a sense. Now, speaking of Herikeri and Samurai Rebellion, it feels like it's set what is the template for how to shoot a samurai movie. Truly.
Yes. Yes. And how to shoot like really good action in general.
Absolutely. And this probably, I don't feel like this would be breaking new ground whatsoever, but I feel like certainly highly inspirational on a cat that we just talked about, I believe just last week, and that's Quentin Tarantino. And the
Hmm.
the crash zoom, I believe, is the terminology for it. And I think,
Snap zoom. I think it's
yeah,
snap zoom.
where you get right in their face, or you zoom out real hard, and it's, if you watch a Tarantino movie, or I think a lot of Tarantino movies have it now. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
Reservoir Dogs had it. It maybe did, but I can't remember. And then Once Upon a Time, I'm not sure, but I think some of his westerns, and definitely Kill Bill, were.
Yeah. Kill almost all of them from Kill Bill Beyond. There were those snap zooms that he would use. Almost a trademark of his, would to just quickly zoom into a character, which I always love that.
Yeah, and from your standpoint, because I agree that it is effective, but do you, in your mind, have you thought, why is it effective?
Well, I think it's just to get a sort of get a reaction out of the audience, more or less,
Mm,
to increase the importance of a certain object or a certain expression
mm,
in a certain scene. And like a good one, one that I've been picturing is in Django Unchained, where they meet Calvin Candy for the first time.
mm,
He turns around and it just snap zooms on his face, and you instantly know that right there is the man that they're after.
mm. Yeah, it cues. You're saying it cues the audience into pay. This is something to pay attention to.
Yes, yeah, more or less.
And I think that is used quite effectively, especially for like expressions where you can tell, oh, like the energy has changed, perhaps, or that the intensity of a situation is escalating. Um, so diving into the story, Nakadai's character comes to a a would you call it a samurai village? I know they used a different word for it, but samurai
I think it's
temple.
like a yeah, I think it's a temple.
Uh, and he has said that after his master's, I guess, his master fell, he was out of work, and more samurai are becoming ronins, which is a samurai without a master. And because of his situation, wishes to commit harikiri. And the guy, I think it is the master of the temple that Nakadai goes to, tells him the story of someone who did this as kind of a scam to try to get money just to be sent away, because obviously this is a very intense action, course of action. So he hears
Yeah,
this tale in which this man was kind of forced to go through with it, and forced to use a bamboo short sword as opposed to an actual steel blade, because that was what he brought with him. And the Nakadai's character says, "Look, I'm for sure going to go through with this. This story doesn't scare me." Asks for 3 seconds, who were all sick, and there is a tremendous twist at the end, at this part. Which, Ethan, would you like to reveal the twist? Which I
yeah,
will say, if you haven't seen this movie, it is a masterpiece.
yeah.
Definitely check it out.
If you're gonna watch this video, stop it now and go watch the film. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it gets revealed that in an act of sort of revenge, it gets revealed that the story about the last person to commit harakiri at their temple, at their shrine, was actually Nakadai's son or
Son-in-law.
pupil, son-in-law. And in an act of revenge, he decided that he was going to kill all three um, who were intended to be uh, like masters of this shrine in a brilliant twist and some of the best action ever put on film. He swiftly kills all three of them before coming to this shrine and being asked to be aided with Harakiri. Um, so yeah, it's genius.
And one quick thing is, I think the three people in instead of killing them, he only took their braids, or what would you
Yeah,
call?
they're braids.
Yeah,
They're the things that basically hold their honor, and he basically took their honor. It's basically like killing them. I think that's what they said.
exactly. And because the master says, well, they should have committed seppuku, and tells them to do so after this amazing battle in which Nakadai takes on about like 20, 30, maybe 40 other samurai. So he doesn't physically kill them himself, but essentially puts them in a spot where death is their only option moving forward,
Mm.
which is quite
Yeah,
brilliant because it's like a extended revenge. It's much more devious, sinister, and prolonged than a swift death.
yeah, definitely.
And I loved that. I loved how the story was narrated, and how the how you are kind of told to feel, uh, depending on the perspective of which the story's being told.
Yeah,
Because from the master's perspective, you could be somewhat understanding of what they were trying to do. It's, just essentially making an example, and they are essentially building up the facade that you, as an audience member, you have no other perspective, so you kind of are in no position other than to believe it. And then Nakadai, through his storytelling and his narrative of the events, and on top of that, his actions of dishonoring these three supposedly respectable samurai, completely crashes down everything that was built up in the first, third of the movie.
yeah.
From
They
that,
build up this facade of honor, and the movie has a lot to do with honor.
exactly, which, and like, Nakadai's character, honestly, and I was gonna say something, and then I stopped myself, but there is some dishonor in everything that was done, and honestly, you could argue that his son-in-law was the only one who he maybe acted the most honorable of the bunch.
Hmm.
And do you have any take on that, Ethan?
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is that at the end, he did really kill himself. At the end, not by seppuku, but by his own terms.
It,
So, but there is a certain level of dishonor that that comes with his actions. So I could definitely see that. But he's doing it to a group of people who put on this facade of dishonor.
Yeah, and Nakadai, I think his final actions are the redeeming factor, possibly the thing that could most like bring him up close to maybe even beyond the level of his son-in-law. The thing that I think separates them is that the son-in-law was willing to give up like anything and everything for his wife, whereas Nakadai, and it's a point that he himself makes, and that's the reason it stuck with me so much, was that the facade of being an honorable samurai and needing his swords was perhaps the difference between losing his family and not.
Yeah.
And that's a point that I did not bring up earlier, but the extra salt in the wound was that the reason Nakadai's son-in-law was in this situation was because his baby, Nakadai's granddaughter, was very, very ill. They needed money for a doctor. And since his son-in-law had to commit Harakiri, they were without a doctor, so the baby died, and the daughter of Nakadai was also sick, and probably a combination of grief and her daughter dying also died. So Nakadai had nothing left after this, and was ultimately what set him onto this trail of redemption and revenge.
Yeah, definitely.
So the action at the end, well, first of all, another distinction, and you brought this up, I think, a week ago, was that Kobayashi certainly he works on a more personal scale with his samurai films, and
Yeah.
it's I love them both, and there's I love the large scale set pieces that Akira Kurosawa is able to accurately shoot and create something with, but this very personalized samurai movie also has so much merit.
Yeah. It's no wonder that this is consistently put against Seven Samurai as the greatest samurai film ever made, and one of the best films ever made in general.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's very high up on Letterboxd's 250 best narrative.
It's number
features.
3. It's number
Damn.
3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Higher than Seven Samurai. And I love Seven Samurai. It's such an important film.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think that Harakiri is a far more rich and emotional experience than Seven Samurai.
So, I prefer Seven Samurai, but I think you have your opinion is really based in that the story itself and the way it is told in this. From that perspective, it definitely like it gets the nod over Seven Samurai in that, and that's not to discount Seven Samurai's film, but Harakiri is quite frankly, honestly, the more and more you think about it, the story itself and how it's told, which is such an important part of cinema, is it's really at the top level. It's in the elite level as far as
storytelling.
Exactly. And I just it's hard to dissect like what makes it so good? Is a lot of it based on timing? Do you think, Ethan? Like as far as when certain reveals are made apparent?
Well, it's just a perfect story. I mean, it's a very simple story, very simple, very concise, but it's done into near perfection. It's just such a perfect story that you could just like watch and be so engaged in.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It
It's
it
like a Citizen Kane.
I
That's what I would compare it to, kind of. It's not like as influential as Citizen Kane,
mhm.
but Citizen Kane is not special in regards to it's special in regards to what it did. Nowadays it's not seen as special, but what makes it special is it's doing all the things that you would do nowadays, but to such a great degree. Because Orson Welles wrote this film so well, he directed it so well, he acted in it so well, and just documenting this one man, Charles Foster Kane, in such a deeply interesting way from an emotional and investment perspective that it just works so well as a film. Um, but I would say Harakiri is the same in that spirit.
And I ultimately I think that is what makes both Harakiri and Citizen Kane timeless.
Yes.
Now, just some silly debate topics. Kurosawa or Kobayashi?
Kurosawa.
Okay.
I love Kobayashi,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Harakiri's better, but I didn't say Seven Samurai was my favorite Akira Kurosawa film. I think Seven Samurai is great. Did I say, wait? Did I? Did the sentence that I just say make any sense at all, or just
No,
just confused?
I think it did. Well,
Okay.
I'm gonna throw this out there. I think I know it. High and Low is your favorite Kurosawa film?
Yes.
Yeah.
High and Low is my favorite, but I also love Ron more than Seven Samurai. I also love Yojimbo more than Seven Samurai. That was my first Akira Kurosawa film.
Oh,
And
I
I think
love
that
Yojimbo.
movie's way more tightly paced than
Mm-hmm.
Seven Samurai. They're, as far as pacing goes, I think Seven Samurai is a little weaker in
Mm-hmm.
that aspect. Personally, the battle sequences in it are amazing.
Mm.
Obviously, the filmmaking is top notch. I just think the pacing is a little off, but still an amazing movie.
I agree with you there, and um, it I can't fully commit to this answer. I mean, Kurosawa is my favorite, just of all, but
Yeah,
I also I haven't seen the Human Condition trilogy yet. Um,
yeah.
but
And that's the thing, is that a lot of Kobayashi's films are a time investment.
yes,
Qui-Gon was 3 hours.
yeah,
Uh, Harakiri and Samurai Rebellion are both over two. The Human Condition is 3 parts, all of which are 3 hours long.
exactly. To kind of embolden your point, these two movies, if you were going to choose any of his movies, these are the least time investment, I believe. And
Yeah, it,
so,
if you're gonna watch his masterpieces, these
yes,
two are the least time. Uh, they take the least time to, and they're definitely worth watching.
absolutely. And second silly debate topic, Nakadai or Mifune?
Mifune, easily.
Same. But
He's iconic. I think he's the greatest Japanese actor of all time.
Nakadai's performance in Herikeri, it made it closer. It helped
Hmm.
make up some of the ground. but and just kind of going back to the Seven Samurai just discussion, I think Mifune, his performance, man, that film doesn't get off the ground the same way. Let me retract that. It would be a good movie. It would not be a masterpiece without Mifune. He is the glue that holds that movie together. He is the straw that stirs the drink. And honestly, this performance in Harakiri rivals that. I would give maybe the slight nod to Mifune, but and his just he has so many performances that are terrific that it's very, very difficult.
Yeah. Definitely check out Sword of Doom, because it's also Nakadai and Mifune in two roles in the same movie, and it's really good.
I'm adding that to my watch list right now. So, Ethan, any final thoughts as well as your rating on Harakiri?
I don't have much else to say. It's just a one of a kind, beautiful, brilliant, genius masterpiece. So 5 out of 5 easily.
I agree. I'm 5 out of 5 as well. No detractions. Definitely
No.
go out and watch. The next movie by Masaki Kobayashi is Samurai Rebellion. This is another revenge tale, and not to spoil anything, but the ending is what really made this movie for me. How about you, Ethan?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the ending was fantastic. Definitely.
And the story was a good story. It was well told. I would argue that, I mean, Harakiri is unrivaled, and Samurai Rebellion was, you could tell obviously through the same creative mind, but not just quite at the same level as far as what the story was and how it was told.
Yeah.
Would you like to give a quick synopsis of this one?
I will. So it follows a guy who works as like a guard for this local kingdom, this Japanese kingdom, and he lives with his father, and he's in love with the girl that is like the master's daughter of that castle, and he wants to take her away and leave, but the people who are in charge of that castle are basically going to charge him for death for this decision. They end up having a child, I believe, and so along with the help of his father, played by Toshiro Mifune, they kind of go on a revenge path, like a rebellion path.
Absolutely. And the kind of sticking point is that the kingdom kind of forces them into this sticky situation to begin with, forces the wife upon Mifune's son, and Mifune kind of, he was inspired by this relationship because it ultimately blossoms into a true love, where he looks at his own relationship and he felt like, it was a marriage of convenience, for lack of a better term, because it gave him better social standing and allowed him to have this respect in the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And it it feels like the changing of mindset between kind of uh, alliances being what the basis of a marriage is, towards what is now, very much considered the norm in, you know a lot of the globe, or at least with Western audiences, and I think Japanese audiences now, which is marriage is kind of based upon affection and caring for one another. Uh,
Yeah,
so that was a neat kind of emotional beat to kind of throw in to be the motivation for uh, the protagonists.
definitely.
And that seems to be consistent, at least with this movie and Harakiri, that it's uh, love that you have for family, the affection you have for your family, which is very much within Japanese culture and a lot of cultures, but also the kind of to stand up against what you find to be like authoritarian type structures.
Hmm.
And I think, especially, you know, this has been kind of a sentiment that has existed, maybe if we go all the way back to 1960s, where the Western mindset, there's been growing cultures and subcultures that are very anti-establishment, and I think that mentality is always, it's almost an attractive mentality to not go along with the man, so to speak. And
Yeah,
it's something that makes it kind of evergreen now, because it's been a growing sentiment over the years.
definitely.
I will say, you kind of, you mentioned this earlier. Mifune kind of gets thrust into a more central role as we get into the second half, and especially last third of this movie, and that was when the story really started to pick up, and as his character showed more emotion, so did I become more invested in this movie. Did you feel the same way? Did you fancy the second part of this movie a lot more than the first part?
Yeah, the building up part, the building up to the conflict was really good, but
Mm-hmm.
the actual conflict is what really, it's the finality that really holds the film together, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, that's a lot of it is thanks to Kobayashi's action sequences, which once again are fantastic.
Absolutely. Um, and that, I think, is maybe the greatest distinction of this movie in comparison to Harakiri, is I felt Harakiri's first half was like just as good. The entirety of the movie felt like it was hitting on all cylinders, and that's what makes it like one of the best movies. Period. So any now criticisms that I'm going to make it against Samurai Rebellion isn't to say this is what made it a bad movie. Quite the opposite, actually. But just in comparison, Samurai Rebellion, the first half was really well done, but it's hard to pitch a perfect game twice in
Yeah.
your career, and
Yeah.
and it's not bad by any means, but it wasn't quite at that level. But the second half of Samurai Rebellion, you could make there. I think there's an argument that could be made that that ending sequence definitely rivals Harakiri's, in my opinion. I don't know which one I would prefer, but they're very, very close in my mind.
I think Samurai Rebellion is kind of like a lesser. Harakiri's nearly equal omniscient cousin, I would say.
Mm.
Like he's so close to his older omniscient cousin, but uh, he just falls flat because I mean you can't. Harakiri really actually honestly talking about Harakiri has made me realize how perfect that movie is from a story perspective. Samurai Rebellion has those dragging moments that Harakiri does not.
I agree, and it's not filled with them, but they're there, and like watching them both in the span of a week. That's a hard compare. Like that's a hard shadow to live under, especially
Yeah.
because I watched Harakiri before Samurai Rebellion, and it's like, man, it's hard to describe this, but it's anytime you watch like a fast paced movie and then something that isn't maybe a slower pace that feels even slower. I was kind of waiting. I'm like, I know what Kobayashi is capable of, and I was really waiting for it to take flight, and it did eventually get there, thankfully. But you're right. The first half wasn't quite on the same level for sure. There's a little bit of
Yeah.
drag in some of the pacing and the story beats just weren't quitely as expertly crafted.
Yeah. I also didn't really get a lot out of the romanticism of the is he played by Nakadai, the main character?
So Nakadai is actually he's just a side character. He's at the beginning. He's a border guard, but there is an awesome one of the best scenes of the whole movie. Mifune battles Nakadai
That's right.
at the end, but the
Which is
son,
awesome.
yes, that was an amazing, and it was surprising also. But the son, I'm not super familiar with. I don't know how many movies I've actually seen him in.
Yeah. But the son and his new wife, I didn't feel like a romantic connection. Like, obviously, I don't think Japanese people are that romantic as far as relationships go. But, like, with Harakiri, you actually felt that they cared about each other. You
That's
felt that uh, the son son-in-law actually truly cared for the two people that he loved because he was willing to sacrifice himself and everything that was known to him to get them the money to help them survive.
that's a really great point, and I completely agree with you because even though their relationship was painted to be special, the just in these movies it's playing very faithful to the actual time period in which it's set. And you're right, like relationships generally are depicted as not, it's supposed to be very behind closed doors, and intimacy is not something that you express outside of the home, or something that would be able to be illustrated from an outside perspective. But
Which should honestly be culture for everywhere.
yeah, I think yeah, there wouldn't be many complaints. Only like older creepy gentlemen would probably be in against that, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and hey, you and I are gonna be there someday, so
Maybe.
I'm joking. But
All old movie guys are going to be creeps.
exactly, it's in our DNA. But
Yeah, Harvey Weinstein DNA.
exactly, even the scenes of just those two, I guess they discuss things and there's more of a respect between them. And I think that's supposed to be like, not shocking, but that's supposed to land and be very weighty, just the way that they interact. But it doesn't fully connect because I think a lot of audience members, especially in the West, that's considered tame.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have any
Yeah.
impact for us.
Yeah, there probably is a relationship there, and it's been like a couple weeks since I first watched Samurai Rebellion, but I remember there being less of a connection than there was in Harakiri.
Yeah. Well, the actions spoke so loudly as to the
Yeah,
commitment, and you don't.
which is key to a relationship,
Yeah,
from
exactly.
what I see.
I mean, actions speak louder than words, right?
Definitely.
So ultimately, I think what really this movie really lives and dies by its ending, quite frankly. And
Kinda, yeah.
one movie that comes to mind, I'm not sure. I might have brought this up before, and I cannot remember if you had said you'd seen it before, Ethan.
Hmm.
Have you seen the Great Silence, the Sergio Corbucci movie?
No.
Okay. I'll just leave it at this. This ending reminded me. It gave a very similar feel to that movie.
Gotcha. I've never seen a Corbucci movie. He did Django, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Um,
Yes.
you're a fan of Leone, correct?
I love Sergio Leone, yes.
I'd recommend at least The Great Silence and Django. I've seen those two. I can't speak to others. I know there's others that people like. I think Tarantino had said that Hellbenders is one of his favorite spaghetti westerns, so I would maybe throw that in too. But definitely check those out. But this ending was tremendous because it didn't end the way I thought it was going to end at all.
No, me neither. I do love the ending of this film, though.
It first of all, you get great conflict, and this movie, it lays the groundwork for an awesome final showdown in that Mifune and Nakadai are they're like presenting blades to the master, and the master comments that I would love to see you two duel because I've heard you're the two best swordsmiths in the kingdom, and they said they're not going to. So from that, like immediately, you're like, well, I want to see what this is all about. Like this must be a great battle. And then when they
A
finally
Chekhov's gun thing.
say that again,
Like a Chekhov's gun situation.
yes, exactly. You show something, and you're all immediately wanting to know, okay, what's gonna happen with this. And then the actual fight between the two, it ended much quicker. It played very realistic and like what you would expect an actual samurai sword fight to play like, but it was much quicker than I anticipated.
Yeah.
Mifune, pretty much defeats Nakadai. It quickly was a bit of an overstatement, but a lot quicker than I had anticipated. Like I thought this was going to be Obi-Wan Kenobi fights Anakin Skywalker type deal, where
Yeah.
they're jumping from this train ship to here and here, and then someone says, "Don't do it, Anakin. I have the high ground," and then splits them in half.
Yeah.
That
It's
wasn't
not
the case.
No. I mean, the quickest The quickest battles can sometimes be the best. As a very big fan of, I don't want to spoil it, but there's a really great short battle at the end of. I'm not like a huge anime fan, but if I had to recommend one for you at least, it would be Cowboy Bebop.
Ooh, okay.
Great, great anime. I think it's nearly perfect. For a while, it was my favorite actually, and but at the end of that, there's a very really short but sweet battle sequence between the protagonist and the villain.
I'm gonna have to pick that up again. I started it and I forget which episode it was, but I absolutely loved this one sequence, and and stopped for whatever reason, got distracted and pulled into to other media. But I'm gonna
Mm.
have to pick that back up because it's one of the shorter anime as well, right? It's like
Yeah,
it's only like 20.
26,
Yeah, exactly.
26.
Where
But it's a great show. Probably don't need to go much else outside of that in terms of anime. Like, I'm not that much of an anime fan, like I said. I really like grounded, very well told stories.
mhm.
And there's some in there, like Monster. Monster is my favorite. But definitely if you love like Western science fiction, cyberpunk mix, a little noir in there, uh, definitely Cowboy Bebop. Check that out.
Oh, that sounds good. What? So the abruptness of the battle, it did. I think to your point, it wasn't just because it went against my expectations. It was still very impactful, and one of the things I loved was it became even more impactful by the end. Which, and another spoiler alert. Up until this point, I don't think we gave away too much, obviously, but
Mm.
if you haven't watched this, go and watch it. Another one I would recommend.
Yeah,
Nakadai pleads with Mifune to give him the baby because he says, I'm going to defeat you and I can at least take care of your baby. And while that in and of itself doesn't turn out to be true, it's actually like the worst case scenario, for lack of a better expression, because Mifune takes out one of the last people who would be able to take care of his baby, probably the way that he would want, and then goes up against an army by himself. And, it's amazing that despite the circumstances, the way it's visually displayed, you think he has a chance until the very, very end, where you see how outnumbered he was and outarmed. And it was
yeah,
just a tremendous, weighty ending that I loved.
yeah. It was great, and just the baby lying in the field, perfect punctuation.
Exactly. And like seeing that, there was just a short scene where you see all of these like musketmen coming out of the like thickets, and you see there's like 100 of them, and it's Mifune uh, literally against the kingdom, and it's like this perfect illustration of the power that the powers that be, and what people were up against, where I mean you really were under their rule, like rebellions were not allowed, and
Hmm.
you were really up against the fence. You were backed into the corner when it came against standing up against these powers, and it would have to be numbers of people would have, you know what I mean? It would
Yeah,
just very perfectly illustrated.
very perfectly illustrated. Just the way he uses the camera in such grand ways, really. adds some. Despite the fact that his films are so personal, that's the interesting thing. His films are very personal from a character perspective, and uh, what I mean personal is not like about him, but like very one character esque,
Mm-hmm.
rather than being like multiple different characters like in Seven Samurai. But he has a knack for like such wide shots and uh, big like landscapes.
Yeah, exactly. And like, something that he uses the background like so well. Like he just snapshots of what he's able to show. Shots that he's able to get are just the best way I could describe it is iconic. Um and
Yeah, iconic.
yeah, you get movies that can stumble upon like really cool shots, or that might be like the entire point of a scene is just to create this shot, but he almost effortlessly creates these shots. I'm staring at one right now where Mifune is dueling Nakadai, and another one that I was looking at earlier was just Mifune as he's battling, and he captures just these great shots, and he absolutely has an eye for cinematography.
Definitely.
Ethan,
Much more so than someone like Ozu.
I'm glad you brought that up. He is. I feel like we got what we needed to get out of him, and I don't. How many had you seen when we did the episode, and have you watched any additional?
I think by the point that we did, because that was early in our doing these videos together. I think I'd watched like 4
Mm-hmm.
by that point, and I think now I've watched like 6. And I can't do. Actually, no, I think it was 5, and then I watched one more, and it's just. uh, I couldn't really say much about him. They're just more of his like style that just seems so similar. And Kobayashi is just makes these brilliant, beautiful films. They're so well told, feel like there's a sense of difference to it, but you could see that it's under the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
All of them, whether it's like Quiet On or The Human Condition, it's all there. It's all connected direction wise, yet they are very different. Ozu is somebody who it feels like he makes the same movie over and over again. And they're very different, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
because Ozu does like really quiet family dramas, and Kobayashi makes big, grand scale samurai epics. But but I just Kobayashi gave me so much more than Ozu ever did.
So, I want to see if maybe we could get to the heart as to why Ozu. I think on the majority scale, he seems to rank higher uh,
Yeah.
as far as people's favorite directors. And I don't know. Is there anything that screams to you why people look at it that way? Because I quite honestly, I think it's. And again, I haven't seen a lot of Ozu, and I've only seen a little bit more than Kobayashi, and I've seen a good deal of Kurosawa. But despite smaller sample sizes, I think there's Kurosawa, and very close is Kobayashi, and then somewhat, separated is Ozu, but a lot of people don't quite look at it that way. Do you have any reasoning why you think people look at it that way?
I guess I guess people do like that sameness. And if people really jam with Ozu's style, then they're gonna love his other movies because they feel like the same thing. But I just don't find it very interesting. Like when he's doing something different, when he's riffing off of his style into something very fresh and very interesting, then I love it. Like Tokyo Twilight's my favorite of his movies because it's such a dark, drab film at its core, which is like his films are too sweet to have any conflict, in my opinion. Like Setsuko Hara is a legend, and she's just constantly smiling throughout the majority of her performances. And I'm just like, why is she a legend? But I love I love Tokyo Twilight a lot because it deals with tragedy in such a realistically drab way.
Yeah, that was, I think, my favorite among the two that we reviewed, and I I I think the two reasons that people probably maybe discount the likes of Kobayashi and Kurosawa is the just not having a taste for the genre movies, samurai genre movies, and obviously Kurosawa has more what would be considered contemporary while making during the making or shooting of films with Ikaru and High and Low. So I think that is perhaps why Kurosawa still gets some love, just not as much than Ozu, because Ozu made more of those, I guess. And to kind of also kind of fits in a similar vein is that I think just the nature of them being more action ish oriented movie is that I think perhaps like female critics and fans would be able to identify and appreciate Ozu more on a general scale than the likes of Kobayashi, his samurai films, and Kurosawa's samurai films. And that's not to say every female is going to dislike Kobayashi and Kurosawa. I'm sure there's a lot of females who love both, but I would say just on a general scale, I would maybe anticipate them to mesh better with Ozu because I think there's more of a female focus on his films. That's just my 2 cents, my reasoning, but
I would say the majority of people say that Kurosawa is better. There probably are multiple people, a lot of people, who say that Ozu's better. I don't know if I would break it down by gender per se. Just like I guess it just depends on somebody's taste. Like if you love family dramas,
yeah,
Ozu.
true,
If you
true.
love action, you love Kurosawa, and there is a chance that it could be more feminine because of the female focus that it has. Yeah. I don't know if I would like truly classify it by gender though.
I agree. Yeah, because I think and what you're speaking to is there could be a lot of fans on both sides who just appreciate that as well. One final thing that I'll kind of throw into that is a filmmaker who kind of satisfies that same niche, but I think is just maybe I don't know, exponentially might be too strong, but I appreciate more is someone we covered as well, who I think does familial dramas unlike anyone else and understands and portrays the kind of psychology of how these conflicts can impact you is Ingmar Bergman. Like
Hmm.
I feel like they're very much Ozu and Bergman are in a similar vein. Bergman does he branches out into religious stuff. You know, he has other films that are outside of the familiar drama, but he has a lot of those, and I think he nails them. Whereas Ozu, Tokyo Twilight is the best I've seen, but very similar, and it doesn't always strike a chord. Whereas Bergman almost always does strike a chord.
Yes. Yes. He's more stark and he's more interesting than Ozu. Like Ozu, for me at least, he's too like sweet.
Mm-hmm.
With like the conflict that he's trying to portray. Whereas Bergman, he doesn't pull any punches. He goes straight for for your jugular with stuff like Virgin Spring, which is about two men who brutally molest and kill this poor girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the complete robbing of innocence, and he does it in such a stark and such a bummer way that makes his films. That's the type of thing that makes his films so much more impactful as well as investing.
And I think you kind of bring up like a neat question in my head. Is there someone that comes to mind for you? Because I'm drawing a blank. Is there a way to do like a sweet familial drama, and be someone who's done that and done it more effectively than Ozu, or just the nature of that premise slash subgenre? It almost lends itself to the interest is conflict, or
Yeah.
you're dropping a essential storytelling device if you don't have a conflict.
Yeah. I would say that that's a very interesting point, and the one director and the one movie that I would compare it to, and I think I think Ozu had a very big influence on him, is Hirokazu Koreeda. He did the movie Still Walking,
Okay.
which is like very family drama esque. But the conflict is kept to a very minimum, and it's a very sweet film in that regard. The the conflict comes of previous tragedies. It's not like The Celebration by Thomas Vinterberg, where it's like a tragedy sparks conflict.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tragedy that sparks togetherness,
Mm.
which can also cause conflict because of grief.
Okay.
So I think that's the difference, and that's how you make a sweet family drama, rather than trying to have conflict with the sweet drama, or just having slight conflict from other events,
The
but not
celebration.
like
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
celebration with maybe a little conflict.
The celebration is a yeah. That's a bummer movie as well.
Yeah,
That's another
masterpiece.
great movie. Totally recommend. The unveil in that movie is just chef's kiss, priceless.
Yes, chef's kiss. I've seen that movie like 4 times.
I
It's
I,
so
uh,
good.
I very much I want to watch more Vinterberg movies, and he has. I'm blanking on the name, but he has that famous actor who
The
plays.
Hunt.
Yes,
The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen.
yes, and then
Also
is
another round.
yes, both of those I'm very interested in watching, just because great director, great lead actor.
Yeah.
So, Ethan, any final thoughts on Samurai Rebellion and your rating on it as well?
I love it. I thought it was great. It definitely felt like I said, it felt like Harakiri's less omniscient, but still very omniscient cousin. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5.
So we're on the same page as far as ratings go this week. 4.5 out of. Or you said 4.5, correct?
Yeah, 4.5.
I'm right there with you. I thought I was gonna say that I agreed with you and then say a different rating, but
I think we agreed on both Harakiri and Samurai Rebellion.
yeah. So obviously, really really great movie, but Harakiri gets the nod. Definitely check out both, because they're amazing, and also check out Ethan's YouTube channel. He has his Chinatown analysis video, which I was finally able to watch in its entirety once I finished Chinatown, which honestly, I don't know what took me so long to watch that movie. It is amazing. It is, it's one of my favorite movies now, honestly. And it,
Awesome.
it was a amazing analysis. I can, I can honestly see, why it piqued your interest, because it is, there's so much to admire about how that story is told, which is reminiscent of Harakiri. And I'm very much excited to see your David Lynch video and the the other one, which I don't believe you've revealed yet, but will be coming
I think it
soon.
was. I think I did reveal it. It was. It was a. It was basically like a comparison between good writing and bad writing with Velma and Over the Garden Wall.
Yes. And then
So
I do. Do you also have a third, basis of a video as well about?
I have a couple of ideas. I want. I one that I definitely want to get is a movie about one of the directors of Studio Ghibli. His name is Asao Takahata, and I wanted to make a video on why I think he's an underrated genius.
Well, Studio Ghibli is, it's one of it's set in the same breath as Pixar.
I think they're better than Pixar, personally.
I really do want to check out their films, and they're, I think the majority are on HBO Max, which is nice.
Yes, yes, but if you have Hulu, Grave of the Fireflies is the only one you can't watch on HBO, but you can watch that on Hulu. I think.
That I do want to watch. Two that I would be very interested would be the Spirit of the Fireflies, like you said, and then Spirited Away, which I think you're also a huge fan of, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I can and totally see that. And then another one I'm going to be vague about, but it's a long movie. It's been very very critically acclaimed recently. Some call it number one on lists that people watch or look at, and it's about a lady, and it's French.
Mm. Are you alluding to what are you alluding to?
I thought you had an idea to do a video on Gene Deal.
Oh, that's right. I think I scrapped it.
Okay, so at least I'm not spoiling anything.
Yeah, I scrapped the video because I was going to record and I was like, I don't know if I have much else to say about it.
Well, and I, you probably weren't like, oh, I want to watch this like a couple more times just to refresh on anything. I haven't seen it
No.
yet, so I can't be talking smack, but I've heard it's very good. I've also heard it's long. So,
Definitely. I do want to make a couple like on the fly videos before I make the David Lynch ranking. So stay tuned for those as well.
yeah, I definitely check it out. Ethan's, his editing, his script writing, and the way he is able to get his point across is awesome, and makes me. I also am looking into like making videos along the same line as what you're doing, as well as these kind of podcast conversations. So
Yes.
I'm excited to dip my toes into those waters as well, because it's pretty awesome. But Ethan, he's the G at it. He's the guy you want to check out. So definitely do that. His link will be down in the description below. Thank you for joining us, Ethan. Thank you for joining me. Much appreciated, man. This has been
My
great.
pleasure.
That's all from us. Thank you all again, and we will catch you on the flippity floop. Bye, y'all.